Hey guys, a lot of times you hear me interviewing lots of amazing guests, but today you get to hear me being interviewed by someone else. Check it out.
Welcome to the No Broke Months podcast. My name is Dan Rochon, and I help salespeople have consistent, predictable income. Today, I'm joined with Ryan Finch and Chantel Ray Finch, and we're going to be talking about how to grow, scale, and exit, and how to build a business that expands and creates long-term value. Ryan is an entrepreneur, real estate executive, investor who owns, operates 14 companies across real estate, franchising, lending, and business services. And Chantel is also an entrepreneur, author, speaker, and business coach who owns 16 companies. I wonder if that is there any overlap in that? We'll find out more about that. Is that like a 30 all combined? I bet it is.
No, total.
Total. All right, I got you.
Mhm.
And Chantel helps entrepreneurs grow, scale, and exit businesses through systems, delegations, and aligned leadership. Welcome, Ryan. Welcome, Chantel. How are you?
Good. Thanks for
Thanks for having
having
us.
us.
It's my pleasure. So I'd like to start off with like the 30,000 viewpoint and really just so that the listeners can really sort of understand who you are and just a little brief nugget about like your journey and like what got you into being an entrepreneur, what got you into being a speaker, author, etc. And just give us a little bit of introduction. So I guess it's ladies first.
Well, I'll start by kind of talking about what made me go into being a business broker and writing, the book that I wrote about grow, scale, and exit, how to sell your business for millions. It was someone close to me decided to sell their counseling business and they spent about 10 years building it. They ended up moving and wanting to sell it and they ended up selling it for $50,000. And I remember hearing that like after 10 years of working, they sold it for 50 grand. And I was like, that's kind of crazy. And the more I looked at the numbers, it kind of, the reason became clear. And it was some things that they needed to do because buyers don't value the owner's labor, right? Buyers value the profit that exists without the owner. And so I think that was one story. And then another one was a woman came to me after her husband tragically passed away, and we ended up selling her business for $40,000. And that was a miracle that we sold it for that. And the truth is her husband had been the entire operation. He was the technician, the service provider, the one that went into the homes. He did everything. And so when he passed away, that engine that powered the entire company basically disappeared with him. And so that's just kind of, those are kind of two really good stories of what made me go, okay, we've got to have a complete shift in how people are thinking about running their business. They need to think, if I got cancer tomorrow, if I died tomorrow, what would this business be worth? And exactly what you can do to sell your business for millions. So that's kind of what motivated me to get into that space. And both me and my husband, I'll kind of say with him, he's really into the franchise side of things. And I mostly did corporate models. And, I started out wanting to do the franchise model. I ended up switching into the corporate model. But the franchise business that he had, less than 5% of people sell more than 100 franchises. And he sold more than 100 franchises, which is really a miracle that not that it was a miracle, not that you weren't capable, but do you know what I'm saying? Like less than 5% of all people ever sell more than 100. So we just have learned all the things that people need to do to grow, scale, and exit their business. And then we just started thinking, we need to get this message out there for people and really help them so that we don't have people selling their business for 40,000 or 50,000 after working 20 to 30 years and making, $20,000. That's insane.
I was a plumber and I quit my plumbing job and I went into real estate during that time. I haven't really told anybody this, but the crux that kind of leads into all of this is my granddad was in the plumbing union. I was in the plumbing union. We ended up reading this manual, these people that passed away at like 50 and, whatever. And so ultimately I was like, I don't want to do this for 30 years and then die. Like, I don't want to do that. It doesn't sound like what I want my life to be. And that kind of led deep inside of me to where the opportunity opened up to get into real estate. That's how I met my wife. So we've been married 17 years now. And that led to just kind of the evolution of growing the business to keep wanting more and more and more, right? And keep growing and expanding. That evolution kept going, and we started opening other companies that vertically integrated. And so we did that. We've sold off a couple along the way. And so we've done that and we've grown it. And so we've learned, both what it's like to take it and go, if you work a job 9 to 5, or you work a business 9 to 5, and you're just getting a paycheck and there's never that evolution of an exit, that you really don't have growth. All of my mentors had exits. That's the thing they had in common. They took that and multiplied it. So we like to help people do that. That's really something I'm passionate about, helping grow them, keep the cash flows of the business, add multiple businesses. Some people get stuck in an identity where they have to stay in one business because they want that hat on of just that one business. And ultimately, you can break free of that mold, have multiple companies, take one and grow it, sell it, grow another one, grow 3 or 4 or 5 more. And it's a fun game. Once you do it, it's something you can be passionate about.
And Ryan, it's interesting that you say that, because once upon a time, I wore an identity of one of my businesses as that being who I was.
Right.
And so, like what you just described, I went through in my life, and that was pure ego. And I ended up selling that business. And when I sold that business, I ended up opening up 3 or 4 businesses, like almost
Exactly.
within the next 12 months. And so
Exactly.
it allowed for me to be able to like step into being able to provide more value to the marketplace. What, and I don't, I'm not sure who wants to take this. I'll just ask the question, and then whoever wants to talk is great. But what does it really take to grow a business from the ground up?
Well, I'll answer that one. I feel like I talk about in my book that there's 4 different types of entrepreneurs. And, one is I call the Mount Everest kind of climber. And that's with someone who wants to build something like really big, like, kind of an Elon Musk. He made Tesla, SpaceX, Jeff Bezos doing like Amazon. And they're willing to sacrifice like lifestyle balance and sometimes even relationships in pursuit of building something enormous, right? Like Elon Musk, I think he's been married 4 times. I know Jeff Bezos just got married again. And so that's one type. And then there's, another type of entrepreneurs, I call it a freedom builder. And that's someone who just is focused on creating a business that gives them control of their life. Like they want time, they want freedom, they want financial stability. That's like someone like Tim Ferriss, who wrote the book, The 4-Hour Work Week.
Sure.
And then I got this one from my husband. I call it the FU money seeker. And that is someone who wants to just have FU money. You know what I mean? Once they achieve that level of wealth, they just want to have that. That's like a Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, right? He's built wealth through multiple exits, and all he cares about is just FU money. And then the last one's just the best of the best. That's the entrepreneur that can, wants to be the best, right? So I would say that would be someone like Steve Jobs. Like he had one goal, one vision. He wanted to create the MacBook and the iPhone, and he had visionary leadership, and he wanted to become the best. And I believe he did. And he didn't just build a company, he built legacy. And so and when I interview people and I interview entrepreneurs, I ask them that question. I'm like, okay, which one are you? Right? Because that's where you need to start is, do you want to be the Mount Everest climber? Do you want to be the freedom guy? Do you want to be the FU money? Or do you want to be the best of the best? And that helps us to figure out, where they want to go. I have a very good friend that owns a counseling company, and she just does everything herself. And she's read all my books, and, she's the one I give the book. She's like, this all sounds great, but she's like, I just want it to be me. And, if I don't ever sell the business, I don't ever sell the business, and I'm okay with that. Right. So it's kind of like know thyself. Like, what's your end game? What do you want? And I think even now, even with her, I bet if I asked her, hey, you've spent all this time doing this, there's some things that you could do to implement of what I'm saying that at least you could sell your business. You don't have to, I wrote the book, Delegate Everything But Sex, but you don't have to delegate everything, but let's start doing some of it, So I've written a book called Fasting to Freedom. It's called The Gift of Fasting. And it really talks about if you want to do longer fasts, deeper fasts, if you're looking for freedom. And then I have about 5 chapters. I've written a book called Tune In God's Voice. We have the book and we have the Bible study. And again, in both of these, there's about 4 chapters all about fasting and how fasting can help you hear God's voice. So you can do the Bible study with friends. You can get a group of people together and do it together, or you can join us on Zoom or get the book and, do it by yourself. So hopefully you enjoy.
What mindset shifts do you think are required to move from like startup to scale?
I was actually thinking about even that question earlier, but I do want to tag on that last question you asked real quick. The 3 things you need to be able to grow a business are marketing, sales, and logistics. They happen to have the 3 of us on this one call. She's obviously a marketing genius. I don't know if you're aware of that, but obviously you teach sales and you know that that's important. If you don't generate a lead and if you can't close a lead, you're going to be in trouble. And then once you do, you need to be able to help that process all the way through. And in order to build a business, you got to master those 3 things, And for me, doing the franchise side, I mastered the model in the way that I could sell the model of logistics by organizing it for someone so that they weren't good at that. They could help, figure out how to do marketing and sales and then have logistics, kind of done for them. And so you've seen all of that. But going back to your question, in order to do it, you have to be able to expand outside of your thinking. And ultimately, I don't know many people that can do it on their own, right? Because the way we think is all in the same revolutions over and over. And so what you're doing is you need to be disrupted in your thought pattern to think differently. And so once you do that, you get disrupted and you get disrupted. If you're trying to start to scale, you've either done it before or you're going to have to go to somebody who has, because you just can't get your mind around how it works without doing it in most cases. And for me, I had to cheat. I had a couple coaches that kind of helped me. And once I thought differently, I started speaking differently. We started acting differently, and everything kind of changed for us.
So what do you think, what would you say needs to shift in the mindset to go from startup to scale?
Yeah, the first mind shift is that you don't scale a business by doing more. It's about building the right systems so growth happens without everything depending on you. Because I think what happens is like, I got to work harder. I got to hustle harder. It's that hustle mentality. And then I would say step 1 is just a clear offer and positioning. I know that one of the things that Ryan and I have actually struggled with is because we've got so many offers. So you need to have one clear offer that is we call it a USP, your unique selling proposition. Like, this is your clear target audience. Then you figure out your lead generation, system. And you figure out, okay, these are my paid ads. This is my organic. This is my referrals. And then you create a conversion system, whether that's an automated, using it through AI, or you have salespeople that do that. And then we have this thing that's absolutely amazing. It's totally free. If you go to any of our social media and just type CEO, it'll automatically send it to you. But it's this scoreboard that we have. This is how we manage all 16 of our companies on one scoreboard. And it says
every day. I track the revenue every day.
He does it every day.
Stuff weekly.
Without fail. Well, not Sundays. And then, it tells you how many leads came in, how many were contacted, how many were converted, what was the cost per lead, what's the cost per acquisition. Because if you don't track it, you can't scale it. And then just obviously, I always like to say you don't scale, you build a team that scales. Back to the delegate everything but sex. You have to delegate out your low value work, and you've got to keep yourself in that $10,000 an hour activities. And I have something in my book called Eliminate, Simplify, Automate, and Delegate. And you've got to eliminate the things that aren't bringing in money. And then now what we're doing, the biggest game changer that we're helping businesses with is automation with AI. So we just literally, right before we got on this podcast, met with a business owner. We had our team member meet with her, asked her all the questions. She is never going to answer her phone again. She's going to get rid of 2 full-time receptionists that she has on staff. She's never going to answer her phone again. And we did it. We're doing it all with AI for her. So that to me is all the steps you need for scaling.
But you start with the systems, right? Because you mentioned at the very beginning of that, and you mentioned you gave us some examples, but what would you say for either of you the key systems that are needed for a business owner to scale successfully?
I would say you need step-by-step processes for every role. You need checklists for repeatable tasks. You need automation wherever possible. And that goes right back to with AI, you should have an AI receptionist answering every call and text. You should have all your AI doing automated follow-ups. You need lead qualification bots. You know, Ryan has really gotten into these bots with lead qualification, and then workflow automations. And one person can now manage what used to take 5 to 10 people. And if you get on that train, I'm telling you right now, the businesses that are going to make it in the next 5 to 10 years are going to learn how to have one employee and 5 AI agents underneath that person. Another employee, 5 to 10 AI agents underneath that person.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Ryan, would you like to expand on any key systems that maybe we should talk about?
I mean, I know she's going into a lot of these things as it pertains to technology, and that's kind of where my brain is going. You know, I think there's the people need to have a system, like meaning every person has to operate in a flow. So I'm kind of going off the tangent of what she's talking about because you're talking about physical systems, and I mean more like brain systems. Like the way your brain operates needs to be in a system and a flow. You move everything through what they would call a Kanban type view. And so that has to be a system. The process of everything you do to lead to revenue should be a system. If it doesn't lead to revenue, I've seen people stay on cycles like this over and over. So yeah, I mean, you can use the AI. If you're not following up, you need to have AI follow up with it. If you're doing marketing, it's not leading to a lead, you need to fix that. But there needs to be a lead to a follow up utilizing a system that leads to a sale.
So I will give you an analogy that I just did. We just got this new popcorn maker, and I was making some popcorn for my son, and I just did a video about this. And I literally said that leads are like popcorn. They don't run, they pop, right? And some pop instantly, and those are your ready buyers, and some take a little more time. But most businesses, the biggest mistake they make is they turn off the heat too soon. They get frustrated. They stop the follow-up. They assume the lead is dead and the opportunity just hasn't popped yet, right? And so that's just a really good analogy for you to think about. You need systems in place to go, okay, you are going to have a couple that pop. But if you watch how it works, this pops, then this one, pop, 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 you know, and then at the end, you've got some kernels that never pop, and that's okay too. And so it's just a really good analogy for you to think about. I need systems in place to work all of that popcorn, right? Like some are going to pop right away, but then there's some that are going to take a little while. And so thinking about that analogy, the number one thing is they don't have any kind of real follow-up process for the popcorn that is taking a little bit longer to pop.
I love that you say that. I had an appointment earlier today, and I met this lady about a year and a half ago. And so she would be the one, that kernel that sort of got stuck to the side and didn't pop until it popped last week. And then I set the appointment and I met with her, right? And so I think if I didn't have the systems, if I didn't have the people and AI to be able to follow up with her, then I don't know if I would have taken somebody I met a year and a half ago and then be able to consistently, because it's too much. It's too much work to be able, if you don't have systems and people, for one person, it would be really hard for me to follow up, you know, in time. But fortunately, you know, the systems are there. All right. I'm curious, what do you think makes a business, and this would be actually for either of you, right? Because you guys are brilliant in what you both do. And I'm curious what, you talk about selling a business, what makes a business valuable to a buyer?
Well, to me, the number one thing is recurring revenue. And I think this is the thing that I can help people, me and my husband both help people do more than anything else, is we can go into a business and figure out the 8 different recurring revenue models that produce income. And I talk about 8 different models. And the best analogy I will give you is either the refill model, where if you think about the Dollar Shave Club, right? Like, I love this company. It's such a brilliant company, right? Because you always need a razor, right? Guys need razors, girls need razors. It's a commodity. Everyone needs it. And every single month, these people are sending you a new razor. So with the car wash, if you think about car washes, right? There's a car wash we just helped that created a model where now they have $20 a month. Every single month you get unlimited car washes. It used to be You don't want to keep chopping down the tree every single month over and over again. You need to come up with a recurring revenue model. And what happens is people get in the day to day and they can't come up with it. They're like, oh, maybe for that business it will work. And you wouldn't believe how many new recurring revenue models we've created. And that 10X is a business.
The key thing that always comes up for me in doing this is that you need to go on vacation. And in order to really learn how to run a business and have a business that's sellable, you need to go on vacation, because then you're going to find out everything that's broke. Because every time your phone pings with something they need you for, or everything that stops in the process, that's broken. And that's what needs to be fixed. And, I learned that. It took frustration. Like, why are you bothering me for this? Why are you And I was mad at them for bothering me. And ultimately I was like, it's not their fault. It's my fault, because they don't have the answer. There's not a manual. There's not a process. There's not somebody else to do it. And so it's all dependent on my decisions. And when you have that key man, problem, then you are really going to struggle to sell, because then somebody's buying your job.
Yeah, because you can't, like, if the business depends on you, then you can't. I mean, unless you want to be the employee, right? It's near impossible to sell a business that relies on one key player, for sure. Or at least that would be what I would expect. You guys have more experience in selling businesses, but in what I'm saying, would you say that that's correct?
The businesses that, hands down, I'm telling you, the ones that sell for the highest revenue is if they have predictable cash flow. That's how they get a higher company valuation. And that's how you can sell it instantly. Like, I'll give you an example of something that we just did. We decided to buy air purifiers for our house. We bought two different ones. We bought one that was called Jasper and one that was called Air Doctor. Jasper, when we first bought it, we didn't even realize it, but literally it must have been some little button that, said, please send me a new air filter every 6 months. Air Doctor, when we bought it, it never asked us that. So every 6 months I get a new air filter. Think about how much revenue, because you forget to get a new air filter. You forget that you need that. So the valuation on Jasper is going to be a whole lot higher than Air Doctor if they can't figure out a way to start doing that recurring revenue. So that's just another example of how powerful recurring revenue strategy is, and coming up with that for every business.
Have you ever asked, God, are you speaking?
What on earth am I here for?
In a world full of noise, opinions, and distractions, He's been trying to reach you. Tune in, God's Voice, Your Purpose. It answers these questions. Hear God, find freedom, discover your purpose, make a difference. You'll finally learn how to know the difference between God's whisper and your own inner noise, how to reinvent yourself with every new season, and how to answer the question every person asks at some point. What on earth am I here for? If you're ready for clarity, direction, and breakthrough, this book is your guide. Quiet the chaos. Hear Him clearly. Step boldly into your calling. Tune in. God's Voice, Your Purpose.
I love it. Ryan, let's wrap this up in this way. So I'd like to hear any final thoughts from you, Ryan, and then Chantel from you as well, about like what, maybe I should have asked you a question that you'd like to talk about. But for the person who wants to be able to build a business that's scalable, that is sellable, and that is predictable, how would you advise somebody to grow, scale, and exit?
Kind of going back to this, I was looking at some stats earlier, and I saw that, and this is somewhat self-promoting, but this is important, is one of the companies I have averaged $1 billion a year in sales for the last 10 years. And the reason I bring that up is because I know that ultimately I paid $24,000 for someone to help me learn how to do that, right? And all of those things, I think it's a fair trade. Like the 2017 is when I paid, and here we are today, and $1 billion a year in sales. And ultimately, I know what it takes to be able to do that. I'm not going to give somebody a magic pill that's going to answer that right now, like whether it's drive more revenue or sales or system. And I think I'd be giving them a false hope if I tried to answer that. It could sound really witty and cool and make a good reel out of it. But ultimately, I know that it takes a lot of hard work. It takes, when you asked earlier, being relentless is what it's going to take. And it takes a knowledge and being relentless in the right path on the right way, because then you get this vision, this clarity that's going to lead to success. And without that, you kind of meander. And that's why I say that, is because if I didn't pay that $24,000, I would have never got the clarity that I got to building that one company that we're talking about now. And so, that's if anything, that's the value that I want to try and add, is that they need to get to that mentor, get to that person, steal it. You can get it. It took me 2 years. They may be smarter. I remember I was on the phone with them when I figured it out and it clicked. I hung up. I was like, I got it. And I hung up the phone and I knew exactly what to go do. But other than that, he was asking me all the questions, because even when you're asking the question, we're giving the answer, but it only goes through the filter and the lens in which we see the world and see business. And ultimately, that takes really breaking down the way we see it, changing and reframing it. And that takes some time, kind of like going to physical therapy over and over again.
Chantel, what would you like to share with us that maybe we haven't discussed today?
Well, I want to share a statistic that is mind-blowing, but 80% of businesses actually never sell. And most founders say they want to sell their business one day, and very few actually build a business that can be sold. And so if you want to exit for real money, you actually have to completely change your mindset from the very beginning. And you can't just look at it as, I just want to make income. And I have an analogy that I talk about in the book. It's called the CARTS framework. And C stands for, you want a commodity. You want something that people need, right? Because if you sell something that no one needs, then that's not going to work. And then A stands for automatable. You've got to figure out how to automate things. R stands for replicable. And you've got to be able to figure out how to repeat the process, because if something only works in one location because of one person, you can't scale, right? Like a lemonade stand that only works with you, that's not going to work. And then the last one is trainable. An average person, not a genius. If only a genius can run it, then it's going to be fragile. McDonald's trained thousands of teenagers. Chick-fil-A, my son works at Chick-fil-A. He's 15 years old, and he's able to deliver that same chicken nuggets and the same chicken sandwich every single day, the same way every day. And that's trainability. And then the last one is just simple. And I think that most of us as founders really make things complicated. Simplicity scales. And so complexity fails. And you can also say simple sells, simple scales, however you want to say it. But at the end of the day, filling your mind with these amazing podcasts. Thank you, Dan, for putting this on and getting this out there for people. But, reading books. I know you've got a new book coming out too that I can't wait to read. And just really getting this information out so that people can start thinking differently just from the start.
And if all else fails, marry a hot, smart woman. All right. I'm just telling you, I don't know if it'll work for you. It worked for me, but if it doesn't work, that's your fault, but it worked for me.
Well, Ryan, I think that's good advice there, sir, for those that it's appropriate for.
Write that down. Write
it down. Ryan, thank you. Chantel, thank you. You guys are amazing. And audience, thank you. And until next time, have the best day of your life. Be grateful. Make good choices. Go help somebody. And God bless you. I love you to death. Bye.
Bye.